So for those who know me, they know I love a great story. And I am super excited to interview our guest today. Greg Vetter has probably one of the most amazing roller coaster ride stories I've heard. And yet I love his vulnerability in deciding to share it to the world in hopes that he empowers and equips others who are thinking about taking this journey of starting their own business or where to go or what to do, that he can provide them the playbook. And his book, Undressed, which amazing book, by the way, I'm super excited to get it in the hands of our listeners because I know it's going to make an impact. You know, so many of us as entrepreneurs, Greg, we love to share the great parts, but you stripped it down, no pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I just want to welcome you to the show today. I'm super honored and excited to talk with you.
Yeah. I am pumped to be here. Thanks for having me.
You know, we have some mutual friends, and I have heard through the grapevine, like, you've got to talk to this guy, Greg. He's literally, he says the same things you do around business and entrepreneurship. And I heard an interview with you, and you said something, and immediately my ears perked up, and you said, if you're going to be a bear, be a grizzly. And I used to say that all the time, but I want you to just kind of expand on that a little bit about how that's worked in your life.
Well, I think everybody wants to do certain things, and we approach them a little bit timid in the beginning because we don't know what we're doing. We don't want to fail in front of others. We don't want to look like a complete idiot while we're trying to start something new. And so this concept of you're going to be a bear, you might as well be a grizzly. It's like, if you're going to do something, just go do it. Don't be afraid of failing. Don't be afraid of being too aggressive or not aggressive enough. Just like fully commit to whatever it is that you're doing and give it every ounce of your soul and see what happens.
Yeah.
And maybe it works great. Maybe it doesn't work. Well, I'm sure you learn something in the process. And so that kind of mastery of a subject or the pursuit of mastering something kind of is at the root of, if you're going to be a bear, you might as well be a grizzly.
Yeah, I love it. And for you, it served you well. I mean, you were in Inc. magazine's 35 under 30. You've done a TED Talk on this theory. And it all stemmed from you walking into a pantry and not being able to find a Tupperware of salad dressing, which to me is like amazing because I think some of the most profound ideas and multi-million-dollar concepts come out of disrupting, right? And disrupting an industry or solving a universal problem. And so share a little bit about like what in the world, like you just walked in and immediately you got the idea. I know you were an insurance salesman.
Yeah.
It's hilarious to me.
Yep.
But so how did that just spark you?
Well, I knew I wanted to do something. I knew I wanted to be successful. I didn't know how to do that. I didn't come from money. I'm a public school boy. My dad's in nonprofit work. My mom was a stay-at-home mom and Pilates teacher. And so, I'd ask them, hey, I want to like get into business. I want to do this. I want to do that. And my dad was helpful, like find people that are experts, ask them questions, read books. But it wasn't, hey, man, great news. You have a trust fund, or, oh, Uncle Jimmy, he's the CEO of whatever. He'll hire you. And so I'm just like, how am I going to figure this out? And so every day I would go home at lunch and I would literally stand on my head in the dark during my lunch break with a pad of paper next to me, waiting for an epiphany, hoping that the blood that was draining into my brain was somehow going to make me smarter. And, it never came. I didn't with any great ideas. I did strengthen my neck, but one day hey, that's a plus. And so I went downstairs to make myself a salad after standing on my head for 15 minutes. And this 2-liter bottle of salad dressing that my mom had made for me was missing. And you don't misplace a 2-liter bottle of salad dressing. It's pretty big. And so I'm searching in my little townhouse. Every pantry is open. Every cabinet door is open. The refrigerator is open. I cannot find it anywhere. And I call my wife and I'm like, did you take the salad dressing to work? And she's like, no, maybe someone came into our house. And I'm like, what are you talking about? No one broke into our house and stole salad dressing. And she goes, well, I don't know what to tell you, Greg. And so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to prove her wrong. And I'm going to call people just to prove that this idea is not right. So I call a guy who eats fast food every day, kind of as my first example of she's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And he immediately goes, "Yup, woke up this morning, was jonesing for it, hopped on the scooter, knew the code to your house, and now I'm crushing a salad." And I sat there and I just thought to myself, what kind of man steals another man's salad dressing?
Right.
But more so, what salad dressing is good enough to be stolen? And I go, I've eaten it every day of my life since I was probably 10. It's never gotten old. There isn't a bottled dressing that is as good.
Right.
Everybody asks for the recipe and can never make it. I played college and professional lacrosse, and my mom would bring it to tailgates. Every meathead on the team is crushing salad with this dressing on it. And I'm like, I'm going to start a salad dressing company.
Well,
Yeah.
and it was healthy.
Right. It was 5 ingredients. There was nothing crazy. And well, initially, I actually didn't think I had an original thought. I thought maybe I just don't know. I haven't found the brand, but it was worth researching.
Totally.
So I went to the grocery stores looking for clean salad dressing, looking for something that resembled what I had been eating forever, and it didn't exist. And so I'm like, this is impossible. There's no way, because this was 2009. There's no way clean salad dressing doesn't exist. It's impossible. And it turned out it did not exist. No one had figured out how to mass produce clean organic salad dressing without thickening agents and preservatives and all this craziness. And so I was like, I'm doing it. This is what I'm going to do. I'm willing to fail. I don't care how much money it costs me. I'm launching a freaking salad dressing business, and I'm going to take it as far as I can take it.
So literally at that moment, you were like, I'm doing it. You went into bear mode, no turning back.
Bear mode.
Nobody handed you money to
Right.
do it, right? So you had to do everything, raise the money, come up with the branding. Like, it was just in your head, I'm doing this.
Yes.
See, and to me, like, that is everything, because I talk to so many people who have such great ideas, I think, but they lack the confidence and the chip in their head that says, all right, you know what? Screw this. I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I am not turning back, and I am not going to fail.
Yeah. And I think it is the fear of failing in front of your peers, right? Because my greatest fear was the fear of failure, which in reality, when you dig into it, it's the fear of shame from failure.
That's right.
So it's not actually losing. It is the emotion of everybody else looking at you like you're a loser.
That's so good.
And so for me, I was willing, being mediocre at 65 years old was way scarier to me than me blowing $15,000 trying to launch a salad dressing brand at 25 years old.
I could not agree with you more. You know, my story is very similar to yours, but I think what's so dynamic is when you hit the rock bottom and you're like, I have nothing to lose other than my dignity at this point. I'm going to roll the dice, because I literally was filing bankruptcy at the age of 30 after my husband and I were mortgage brokers, and the business collapsed in one day. We had like 10 closings lined up. We were killing it. And, you know, in that moment, it did. There was so much shame and guilt, like, what the heck?
Yeah.
But if you can flip your script, and that's what I always try to share with people, is that we all have these stories. And if you can find the golden egg out of the story, which for you was, hey, I had nothing to lose. I couldn't find the dressing. For me, it was I filed bankruptcy. And the way that bankruptcy attorney talked to me, I literally have never been so angry before in my life. I walked out of there and said, I'm going to change the trajectory of how people deal with their finances and debt so they never have to go through what I just went through, and literally flipped my script. And so for you, and I took the last $20,000 off a credit card to start that company. Never looked back.
I did the same thing. I took out, that's when I had a good credit score.
Yeah.
Or
Doesn't matter, but yeah.
Right. And I just took out 20 credit cards, liquidated my 4K.
Yep.
And every paycheck I got, I was just buying raw materials.
And so I noticed that it was you and then your two brothers. And so I want to talk about that briefly because, even as people who are looking to start a new company, starting a new business, and I'm sure you have a lot of opinions on this. I know I do. I've done a gym business with family members. I've been down that road.
Yeah.
And if I could go back, and I'm curious how you feel, if I could go back, there's so many things I would change because I value the relationship more than the business. But from your experience, what was that like partnering up with family?
In the beginning, it was a little tough because we're very close in age. And there was a lot of, why do you get to be the CEO?
Yeah.
And I came up with the idea. Me and my wife liquidated our 4Ks. We took 20 credit cards out. It was launched. And that's what it is. So we're going to apply our respective strengths to this business so that we can all succeed. And so I think the ego management in the beginning was difficult. But then when we started doing all of the personality mapping stuff, the PRF test and the CVI and the predictive index and the Myers-Briggs and the blah, 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 blah. And you started mapping out and saying your natural strengths are where you are. So for Brian, it was sales. For Matt, it was manufacturing. For my wife, it was in the beginning, our chief operating officer to make sure we weren't going to go to jail. Then it was our chief marketing officer because we had evolved into really identifying what our target market was, which was the millennial mom, which was her. And so all of that came with research, and we tried to eliminate emotion, which I think is really difficult for a lot of people in the beginning.
Yeah.
Because everybody thinks that their feelings or their opinion is right.
That's right.
Theirs. And so if you can ground it in something other than your random opinion or feelings on something, it makes those discussions a little bit easier.
That's so good. Yeah. It's to me, having partners is the hardest part of business. I've had businesses where I've been in partnerships, and I think that a lot of people go into it with high hopes. They go into it seeing roses and even with the best of friends. And I know you've experienced it. I've experienced it. But it's such a great learning experience to go into a partnership and then exit that partnership and start to navigate life on your own, because instead of looking at the negative, I always have chosen to look back at the people that I've partnered with and been so grateful because they're part of my journey, right? They extracted something out of me, And so, but it's a very difficult road to navigate. So here you are now, you've built this huge company. And by the way, the other piece of the puzzle that I have to acknowledge you for is you did this right on the cusp of Whole30, which was such a big revolution, especially to the moms out there. And this was the first salad dressing that kind of whet the appetite of oh my gosh, they do make Whole30 products.
And I can eat clean and it tastes good. And so it was really interesting because in the beginning, I was managing our freaking Facebook and Twitter, and people kept coming and saying, hey, this is Whole30 approved. And you're like, what are you? What? But we had made it so clean that it allowed us to participate in every food trend from 2009 until we no longer had it in 20 whatever. Because when it's, 5 or 7 ingredients, that was really the key to us breaking through into mainstream, because every food trend that popped up, we could participate, and our brand was not associated with any one food trend. It just got to participate with all of them.
So you could shift your marketing.
Right. So we would go, okay, yeah, great. It's Whole30, which in the beginning was very important. And then it was keto. And then it was, then there was a paleo movement. Then there was a Whole30 movement. Then it went back to paleo. And then there was keto, and then there was vegan for a minute, then there was this and this and this, and all of it, when you have something super simple and clean, you just get to participate. And so I thought that was a really interesting exercise from a branding perspective, because we watched so many people tie themselves to one specific trend. And then when that trend ended, the business ended with it.
That's right.
And so we were able to really just kind of stand strong and keep bringing people into our brand instead of losing people as a food trend kind of went away.
Right. And I think it was probably very authentic to who you are as a person. And I think authenticity when it comes to branding, the closer it is to being authentically who you are anyways. From what I see, you're very much into health and fitness.
Yep.
You're very much into eating clean. And so it's just kind of a portion of you. So when you're so authentic in your delivery and in your brand and in your story, I feel like the chances of surviving and doing very well are a lot higher for you.
I completely agree. It has been, people ask me a lot, they want to scale businesses and they have great ideas. And what's the key to building a brand that can really become mainstream? And one of the things I tell people is the authenticity that the brand can represent. Once people start digging into you, you better be airtight. Because you can put whatever you want out to the world.
That's right.
But then if they come in and every day I'm at the McDonald's drive-through, it's over.
Yep.
It is 100% over. And so if you're going to dedicate your life to a product or a service or whatever it is that you're doing, you better live it. And it better not be a temporary thing just for profit, because people are going to dig into that and they are going to expose the kind of man behind the curtain for what it really is. And people really, I think, are over the inauthentic nonsense.
I could not agree more.
Like the truth teller seems to be very popular these days because everyone's tired of being told that they're crazy or this nutritional thing is the greatest thing ever. And in reality, I think there was some famous vegan influencer 2 years ago, and secretly she was super sick because the vegan diet was making her so sick. So she was eating meat all the time, but someone caught it on camera and then her whole brand imploded.
Like, why?
And at the end of the day, why?
Yeah.
We want the truth. We're all out here grinding. We're all out here trying to find a better way. We're all out here trying to get to our most optimal state. So if you're telling me, like the Liver King, that all you do is eat liver and you're 45 years old with 6% body fat, and in reality, you're spending $45,000 a month on performance enhancing drugs, dude, I don't need that.
That's right. Yeah. It's so true. Like there's so many people out there that are misrepresenting their brands. But I also think that, sooner or later it flushes out. You and I both know that.
Every time.
That's right.
Every
So it's kind of like one of these things you watch from afar and you can watch the rise, but it's short-lived. It's a sprint. Whereas I'm a marathon person, when I go into business, whatever I go into, it's kind of like stocks. Wouldn't you agree? Like if you don't believe in it, I'm a big Peloton believer. I love Peloton. Like love it. Of course, I invested in it, everything about it. It's the same as in business, as an entrepreneur. You better really get behind whatever it is that you're going into. For you, it was the dressing because you knew how good it was. And now watching what you did with it, which I swear our stories are just alike, did the same thing in a business, rose it to the top, built this huge company. And then, so share a little bit about what that looked like.
Well, we became the #1 organic salad dressing brand in the country. And in doing that, we were 3 years ahead of the clean eating movement. So we were always kind of the first one out of the foxhole, raising money, trying to prove that organic's not a trend. It's going to be here for the long term. Clean eating isn't a trend. It's going to be here for the long term. So we ended up raising a bunch of money. We had 52 different investors. Some were groups, some were individuals. And towards the end, everybody had a different view or an opinion on where we should go with the company and the brand. And a couple groups really started battling each other. And so the only conclusion everybody could come to was we need to sell it. And the timing felt wrong. We had navigated COVID well because we owned all of our own manufacturing, so we never shut down. But then we were in the middle of the supply chain crisis, and it was just kind of a giant shit show.
Yeah.
But they were like, sell it, or, we're going to continue to make you pay $300 a month in lawyers. And so we hired an investment banking group. They valued the business between 300 and 500 million bucks. And then they went out to sell this business, and it didn't sell. And we launched it at the wrong time. The process was supposed to launch, I want to say like in March or April. It didn't launch until July 1st. And just the whole thing was a debacle. But what happened was all the investor groups basically were like, well, this is worth a lot of money, and I want the whole thing for myself. So when it didn't sell, all hell broke loose. And we hired professional negotiators, we had lawyers, you name it, we had. And so then we had to restructure, hoping that just the threat of restructuring would bring people to the table to play nice. That didn't happen. Then during the restructuring process, a couple people made that as difficult as possible as well, which was not great.
Yep.
So this once kind of giant thriving business, fast forward, and we're handing it to some PE group for $4.5 million bucks. And you're sitting in this conference room like you're in a bad dream. And you leave there needing answers. And it's not answers as to why, but more so, what should I be doing now with all of this information? Where should I be going? Where should I be focusing? How can I make the best of this debacle? And I just started writing down the story of how it all happened in the beginning. I didn't want to write a book, but I did want my kids to know if they ever asked, this is what it took. This is how hard I went. This is everything that happened. The good, the bad, the indifferent. This is what I went through. And in doing that, again, I didn't have a timeline. I didn't have a publisher or anything. I had 350 pages done. And I had a performance coach, and he kept asking me, like, are these stories you keep telling real? And so one day I go, here's the story, if you ever want to know the real background of me. And he goes, dude, you got to write a book. And I'm like,
Wow.
I'm not really interested in that. And he said, I spend 99% of my time convincing people to not write a book because they have nothing to say. They're not interesting and they can't help anybody.
Right.
I think you can do all of those things. And so you need to take this very extensive timeline, break it down into real chapters. We need to find an editor, and this needs to be a book. And so here we are.
And it's so good because, Greg, I have talked to so many coaches before in my past who they're going to help you get to ... I mean, I'm sure you've heard it all, right? But what I admire the most, and I don't even know that I could say I would be in a position to where mentally I'd have the headspace to do what you did shortly after building something so big, because I still feel like I'm in a season of mourning of one of the companies that I had. It's a process.
Yeah, it is.
And it's a lot of looking back, like, what the heck just happened and where did it go and how did we get here from a $300 million company to selling it to $4 million? Like, it's a lot emotionally. And so for you to be able to take that out of your head, put it to paper, be vulnerable enough to actually put down the playbook, where your greatest loss could actually be your greatest victory in helping others. I just think that's rare. A lot of people can coach people on how to do it, but few have actually gone to the top, been to the bottom, and by God, they're going back to the top. Nothing's going to stop them.
Yeah, it was not easy. Through the editorial process, it would, rereading something I had written, but then an editor would kind of organize it properly. And, you're sitting there just basically having anxiety again.
Seriously.
Right? Because you got to edit it too.
Right.
And you're reliving this pain over and over again. And I think one of the things I really wanted to do was my fundamental beliefs of leadership are leave things better than when you found them and lead by example.
So good.
And so if those are my beliefs, how do you take a 15-year journey that ended in a dumpster fire and turn it into something that can be used for the next generation of people and myself, by the way, because the field guides I still reread and use in all the different businesses I'm in. But I wanted to do it while the wounds were fresh. I did not want to get to a point where I was making it this kind of romantic, beautiful story of struggle and triumph. It was like, wanted the pain in there.
It was raw. It was the emotions were raw at that point.
I wanted all of it. Like, I wanted the reflections as I looked over this just titanic sinking.
Yeah.
And I wanted the real, I didn't want to make it, this tribute to my legacy. Like, you read a lot of these kind of CEOs write their stories and you leave it and you're like, this guy never had a bad day and unbelievable. So wonderful guy. It's like, that's not helpful to anybody.
No. And I think that's the picture that we've been painted of what success looks like. And what they leave it out is that most entrepreneurs have been at the top and gone to the bottom, and they go back to the top and then they go to the bottom. It's a cycle. We're built for it. And I think that when you look over too, there's more to it than just a great idea. I think you can agree with this. And I'm curious what you would say, because I think there's lots of ideas out there. People come to me all the time like, I have an idea. Can you help me structure this? But right off the bat, I can sit with someone in probably an hour and tell if they've got it.
Yep.
So when I say that, what do you think is one of the biggest contributing factors to someone who's got a successful idea and can take it, bring it to fruition? What is that chip?
I have a Latin phrase in my gym. Fortitudine vincimus, by endurance we conquer. That to me is what it takes. If you have the ability to endure day in and day out, and what I came to the conclusion, it's actually not even a marathon. It is, have you seen that documentary, Just One More Lap?
No,
It is about this race in Tennessee. And the guy it's about, he's a former Navy SEAL. I think it's just one more lap or one more mile or something like that. And the race doesn't end until you're the last one standing. So it's a 1 mile loop, straight up, straight down. You come back through a flat area. You get a certain amount of break in between. I don't even know how they schedule the breaks, but it doesn't end until you are the last person standing. That's when the race ends. So you don't know if it's going to be 50 miles. You don't know if it's going to be 100 miles. You don't know if it's going to be 200 miles. And these people just show up and they just go for as long as they can. And that to me is what people need to be prepared for in the journey of entrepreneurship or following their dream or whatever. There is no end.
Yeah.
And I think we're sold this bill of goods that we can mentally frame the journey of these investors need a 4-year return. This will be done in 4 years. Or this is a 10-year thing. I need to be prepared for 10 years. And in reality, you just need to be prepared.
Yeah.
You just need to be prepared to sustainably endure forever. And when I was getting some of our worst moments, 2017 is one of them. Private equity group, we thought we were going to raise $20 million. They changed the terms of the deal the night before close. We had to do our own version of a turnaround, millions of dollars. Everybody was losing their minds. How do you lead by example in those moments? And so I had to figure out a way to be appreciative of the moment so that I didn't frickin' drive my car off a bridge.
Right.
And lead by example with no end in sight. And so I mapped out, okay, what is my perfect day? Can I live my perfect day every day? Can I control what's in my perfect day so that I'm not relying on outside sources? And can I prepare to go through hell, but still live my perfect day every day? And in doing that, I was able to begin to have these little moments of beauty in the suffering.
Yeah.
You know, Viktor Frankl says it best in Man's Search for Meaning. The happiest he had ever been in his life was right when he was about to die in this concentration camp, and he's laying in the mud, and has hypothermia, and he feels like it's the end. And someone sees him and goes, you can lay on this piece of plywood. And so he gets out of this freezing cold mud and he lays on this plywood. And he said that he had never been happier in his entire life. And it completely changed his perspective of what is happiness and how we can control how we view our circumstances and what happiness actually is.
So powerful.
And that, I was not in that dire of a situation,
Right.
but reading that, it changed my perspective of the hardships I was going through. And then how I could find joy in the midst of otherwise a very stressful, chaotic, nonstop suffering situation.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people could benefit greatly in taking a different approach to their view or definition of happiness.
It's so true. And as even myself as an entrepreneur, I've had those days to where it's like, we live in this bubble. Business owners live in a bubble, and we think that we have to solve every problem all day long, and all there is problems. And when you can step back long enough, for me, it was when I left my company, similar to what you're talking about, and you step back long enough and you realize how little it takes to actually be happy and live a beautiful life. It's like, what are we doing? What is this thing that we've created here in the US that it's like chasing and doing more and having more problems and more fires to put out that is somehow going to bring us this joy when honestly, yeah, did it bring a lot of money? Absolutely. But with it came a lot of stress and a lot of problems. And so there's something to be said when you're in that moment and something so minute as getting up on that board for him. And I totally feel it when you say it, like could be the happiest moment. So I am so honored to have you on here today. And I know for a lot of people who would love to be a part of what you're doing now with homegrown coaching brand, like you're helping individuals launch their brands. How can they get in contact with you and what can you help them with?
Yeah. So gregoryvetter.com, you can go there. And that has kind of links to all the stuff. I'm on social media again for the first time in 7 years. So I'm on Instagram, GLVetter, and then I'm on LinkedIn. And I check all the messages. So people reach out to me all the time. And it varies. One guy that I coached when he was a kid in lacrosse, he wanted to start a porta-john business. And so, we came up with a brand and, we're in it and we funded it and we're helping them run it and we're scaling it. And so that's one side of it. And then I had another guy who's a great example, was friends with my brother growing up. He's running kind of a very successful tech company. And he just called and goes, dude, I read your book. I'm not there yet with how bad things got, but if you could just give me guidance of the problems I'm dealing with, are they as important as I think they are? Should I be looking at it a different way? Should I be taking different supplements? Should I be waking up at a different time? If you could just give me your 2 cents, that would be really helpful. So those are kind of the pillars, and then everything in between are the things that I'm doing right now. So We're launching a couple companies of our own right now. We're helping people. I'm doing some coaching stuff. I'm going to start doing leadership retreats at my farm.
Amazing.
Yeah, starting in April. And so, I'm trying to lead by example, leave things better than when I found them, and do things that bring me joy.
And I think there's so much success found in helping other people reach that because, we've been there. We've been at the top. But I'll tell you, I actually enjoy helping and taking other people's vision and showing them the roadmap to get there more than doing it myself, especially nowadays. So kudos to you. I will have all the links on this episode so you can reach Greg directly. And I hope this inspires a lot of you because I know personally, even being in debt and what people deal with, they feel stuck. And it's so mental. You can bust through that. But more importantly, there's only two ways to get out of debt. One is to quit spending and one's to make more money. And I always root for them to make more money by creating a business. And so if you don't know where to start, reach out. And until next week, we will see you then.
Let's talk about debt. Let's talk about life. Let's talk about winning back your peace of mind.